welcome to AER Int channel and welcome back to Surface Modeling course. Welcome to this new model. In this short section, we're going to practice some of the techniques that we've learned so far by making a spoon like this. It's a fairly simple model, but hopefully it will show us how we can use things like boundary surface and lofted surfaces, and it will give us a little bit more practice with those. So let's get started. Let's open a new bar and start a sketch on the top plane. With surfacing, it's often a case of doing a bit of groundwork in advance, and then when we actually make the surfaces, it's fairly quick because we've got everything sketched out already. So in this video, we'll just set up all the sketches that we need, and then in the next one, we'll actually use those with the surface tools. So we're on the top plane and we want to draw the profile of the sketch from above. Firstly, let's get a center line and draw a horizontal center line out to the left like this. And then we'll also add 3 vertical uprights, one from the origin, one about here to the left of the midpoint, and then one on the left hand edge of the horizontal center line. Then we'll use smart dimension, and the first distance here should be 110 millimeters, and then the second one is 65 millimeters. And this will just help us lay out the rest of the sketch. We're now going to use the trusty 3-point arc tool, so let's get the arc tool, choose 3-point arc. And firstly, let's draw an arc on this end on the right hand side. So let's start on the top and go down to the other side, draw something like this. And then we'll do a similar one on the other side, but just opposite. So start on the top, go down to the bottom, and then pull it out to the left like this. Then let's right click on this right hand arc and press select midpoint, and then hold down Ctrl and also select the right hand edge of the horizontal center line. So it should be the origin, and then make those coincident. And then next, let's select the 2 ends of the arc and also the horizontal center line, and we'll make those symmetric. So this just lines up the arc so that it's centered on that center line. Then we'll do the same thing on the left hand one. So right click on the arc, press select midpoint, also select the left hand edge of that horizontal line and make those coincident, and then select the 2 ends of the arc and the horizontal center line and then make a symmetric. Then we'll get the smart dimension tool, and this arc on the right, let's add a radius of 7.5 millimeters and then a width of 15 millimeters. We can leave the left hand one undefined for now, and our sketch should look something like this. We're then gonna use the 3-point arc tool again, so let's select it. I'm gonna start here at the end of this arc on the right hand side, and then finish somewhere on this vertical line. Then let's make the distance here 3 millimeters, so it should be 3 millimeters above that center line. And then we can exit that tool, and we can select both the arc that we just drew and the arc on the right hand side and make those tangent. And that should fully define that section of the sketch, and this is gonna be the handle of the spoon. Next, we'll draw the head or the bowl of the spoon, so we'll get another 3-point arc. We'll draw one from this point, so from the top of this arc on the left to roughly about here. And then we'll draw a second one from the end of the arc to the end of the other arc, which is the handle. So we might have to zoom in a bit and select that point. So we should have something like this. And mine looks pretty wonky at this stage. It's not really like the actual head of a spoon, so we'll get the smart dimension tool and we'll add in some dimensions. So at this point where the 2 arcs join, should be 20 millimeters up from the horizontal center line. And then it should be 18 millimeters to the left of that middle point. Now, if we find that when we add our dimensions, our arcs all overlap or turn into strange shapes, what we can do is press Ctrl Z, undo, and just go back to the point before we added those last 2 dimensions. And just drag our arcs around, so they're roughly in the same position as the video. And then add those new dimensions, and so 20 millimeters up, and 18 millimeters to the left. And then that should give us about the right position. We can see that the arcs are nowhere near fully defined at the moment, but what we'll do is add some more relations. So I'm gonna select this arc on the left and also the arc next to it by holding down Ctrl and selecting both of them. And then we'll make those tangent. We'll do the same thing with these other 2 arcs. So select the middle arc and the one that goes to the handle, and then make those tangent as well. Then next we'll add the radius to this end arc. Let's make the R12. And finally, let's make this point here 10 millimeters above the horizontal. So that should fully define our sketch like this. And it should look sort of like half a spoon at the moment. We've got some cups in the profile on the bottom, so we're going to mirror some entities over. So I'm gonna select these 2 arcs on the left, and then the arc of the handle as well. And then also select the horizontal center line. and then press Mirror Entities. And we should have the full profile like this. Now, before we exit, we'll just round off that transition between the head and the handle using the sketch fillet that's on the sketch tab. We'll set say 10mm, and we might just have to zoom in and select that point where the two arcs join on the top and the bottom. So now we've got the full spoon profile from the top like this, and we can exit that sketch. Next up, we'll draw the side profile. So we want to start sketch on the front plane, and go to sort of a 3D view. Get the center line tool, and let's draw 3 center lines going down. So the first one goes down from the origin here, from the endpoint of that previous horizontal line. And I'm gonna do one about here, about halfway along. And then final one on the left hand endpoint. So they should all be going down vertically. And then for this middle one, I'm just gonna select the top endpoint. I'm gonna hold down Control. I'm also gonna select this point on the previous sketch and then make those 2 points coincident. So these lines will just help us line up the rest of the sketch. Then we can go to a normal 2 view. So we're basically looking from the side of the spoon. Let's get a center line again. Let's start from this top corner and go down diagonally to that middle center line. Then I'll continue downwards but with a new line to this left hand center line. So those should be 2 separate lines. And the top one should be 10 degrees from the horizontal. Like this. And then the bottom one should be lined up with the top one. So let's select both of those lines. Select the first one, hold down Control, select the second one, and then choose Make Collinear. We now need more 3-point arc. So let's get the arc tool. Gonna start at this top corner, and I'm going to finish at that point in the middle. And then I'm gonna do a new one from that point in the middle. So the right hand one has a slight curve, the left hand one where the head of the spoon is has much more of a curve. And with the smart dimension, I'm going to make this first one 700mm radius. So it's only a slight curve there. And this bottom one should be 50. It's got much more of a curve than the top one. Next up, let's add a radius where those 2 arcs join. To get the sketch fillet, we'll set 20mm this time. And we might just have to zoom in and select the point where those 2 arcs join. This will just give us a nice curve where the head joins the handle. And then just before we exit, one final thing, let's get the point tool. Let's add a point in the middle of this left hand angled line. So if we hover over the midpoint, we should be able to pick up that midpoint of the line there. And this will just help us line up the planes that we'll add in a moment to give us the correct cross-section of the spoon. And if we exit that sketch, we can see we've now got a top profile and a side profile. However, the spoon also has a curved cross-sectional area. So we'll add some new planes and we'll draw some slices of that cross-section. To help us with this, let's hover over the right plane and click Show. So we should be able to see the right plane in the graphics area now. And then a quick way to add new planes. If we hover over the right plane with the mouse, hold down the Control key and then left click and drag from the plane, it will add a new plane. Then we can release the Control key and we can zoom in and we can select exactly where we want that plane to be anchored. So I'm gonna choose the endpoint of this first arc here. And then we can press OK. And that new plane is added. Then let's do a similar thing for the second one. So I'm gonna hover over the right plane, hold down the Control key, left click and drag outwards to add a new plane, and then release Control. And then for the point to select, let's zoom in, and let's select the start of the sketch fillet here. So we should add a new plane there. And then let's do the same for the third and final one. So hover over the right plane, hold down Control, drag the new plane out, and then for the point to select, let's choose the midpoint of the angled line that we added. So it's that small point that we just added in the previous sketch, and it's right in the middle of the head of the spoon, like this. We'll now use these 3 planes to draw the cross sections of the spoon at that point. So as I said, it's quite a bit of groundwork setting up all these sketches. Once these are done, it's much easier to actually use the surface tools. So the first profile at the top of the handle, let's start a sketch on that new plane, plane 1. Let's get a 3-point arc tool. And we'll start an arc sort of on the left hand side of the profile. And we'll finish it on the right hand side. So it should be sort of straddling the center line, like this. Then we can right click on the arc, we can choose select midpoint, hold down Control, and also select the angled line that's going down. Then from the menu that pops up, let's choose Pierce. So the midpoint of the arc is now exactly on the angled line from the side profile. Then let's go to a normal 2 view. Let's get a center line. And draw a center line vertically straight down from the origin like this. Then select both ends of the arc and also that new center line. And then press Make Symmetric. And this will just centralize the arc on that center line. Then for the width of the arc, let's use Smart Dimensions to set that as 20. And let's make the radius 16. And then we can exit that sketch. So we should have something like this. It's quite a shallow arc at this stage, and that's basically a slice through the handle at that point. We'll then do the second cross-section slice, so start a new sketch on the next plane, plane 2. Get the 3-point arc tool again. And again, draw an arc that straddles the center line. So it starts on the left, it goes over to the right. Right-click on the arc, and press select midpoint. Then also select the angled line again, and press pierce, and go to a normal to view. Add a vertical center line again. Select both sides of the arc. Select center line and then press make symmetric. So we can see at the moment, the arc is a bit wonky, but once we make it symmetrical, it's perfectly lined up. And let's set the width of the arc here as 20 again, and the radius as 16. Then let's exit that sketch. Now looking at the arcs, I realized that I've made the first one the wrong dimension. So I'm gonna go back in and edit that first arc sketch. You should be able to do this just by double clicking on the arc, but in other versions, sometimes it doesn't work. Or we can go back and edit sketch 3. So I'm gonna change that radius. Instead of R16, it should actually be 60 millimeters. And now we can see it's a much shallower curve at the top of the handle there. So now that that's fixed, let's go and add the final cross section. So start a sketch on the new plane, plane 3. Get the 3-point arc tool again, and draw an arc that straddles the center line like this. Then select the midpoint of the arc. And then let's also choose the curved line and press pierce. And then we'll go back to our normal to view. We'll add a vertical center line. We'll choose the outside edges of the arc and the center line and make those symmetric. Then let's make the total width 50 millimeters. And for the radius, this is quite a big radius, so let's make that 40 millimeters. And we can then exit that sketch. And we can see the shape of the spoon that we are going to make. So we've got quite a shallow profile at the top. Then we've got more of a curve here. And then we've got even more of a curve in the head. We've got the side profile. And we've also got the top profile. Sometimes with surfacing, it can feel like we're just drawing endless construction sketches like this. But then once we actually start to make the surfaces, it's so much easier and faster if it's all laid out like this first. So to quickly recap, first we drew the top profile of the spoon with a lot of arcs, and then we mirrored it over to the other side. Next up we drew an angled side profile. We added some points along that, and we used those to add new planes. And then on those planes we drew a cross-sectional profile of the spoon at those various points. In the next video, we'll actually start to use all of those sketches to create this spoon. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you like. I hope it can be a little helpful and useful.